Hi everyone, and welcome to Daily Revelations. This is a weekly Bible study where we go through one book of the Bible at a time, and actually one chapter at a time every week, using precept Bible study methods. And if you don't even know what those are, that's okay, because I walk you through that and help you to learn how to do that. And every day of the week we use a different method to dig through the same chapter, and we ask God to just speak to our hearts and change us and grow us. And that's a lot of what I want to talk about today. We are in Daniel 5, and this is day 2 of our study in Daniel 5. And in day 2, if you have the planner, and you can download it, it's down below. And also just know that the fall planner just came out. I started posting that I think last week. So that is October, November, and December, but the summer one goes through September. And so you can follow along with that, and also plan out your day around what God is speaking to you. That's why I created this planner, because I needed that, and I'm just sharing it with you. So day 2. The precept method that I ask you to use is to dig into the literary means that the author is using to notice things that maybe you might have missed in your first read through. Whether that happens to be their description words, it happens to be that they're using maybe poetry, that like we talked in previous chapters about, the dreams and the imagery and the kind of the using of words to describe things beyond just a description. It is, just an analogy. And today I'm going to use what really struck out for me was a comparison contrast. And the Bible is filled with them. You look at one thing, but then you compare it to a completely different, and it gives this exploded view of just how extreme these differences are. And so what God called to attention to me while I was reading through this was the comparison contrast of the vessels that Daniel was and the king was. And the verse that really struck this for me was in verse 27, when Daniel's interpreting the handwriting on the wall and this word tekel. You have been weighed on the scales and found deficient. And here with this king, in the description of this king, throughout this chapter, he was described as pale 3 times. Not only he described himself as pale, but everyone around him saw him as just losing all color because he was so fearful and alarmed. His hip joints were going out of their sockets, and his knees were knocking. Wow, talk about some descriptive words. And here is this man, this shell of a man, who cannot even hold himself together. And then, in contrast, here's Daniel. And Daniel's described with these words. He has illumination, that's used twice. Insight, that's used 3 times. Wisdom, the wisdom of God's. Extraordinary spirit, knowledge. The ability to interpret dreams, that's used twice. Solving difficult problems, the spirit of the gods, and an extraordinary wisdom. That's quite the difference. Here's this man who stands strong and does not have knocking knees. And he is being compared in this chapter to this king who can't even hold himself together. And as I was thinking about that and praying about it, God just gave me a vision of this. In the Bible, we're described as clay pots. We are works of the potter's hands. Yet we have to stay within the potter's hands to be sufficient to hold the sufficiency of God within us. It's not us. It's not the vessel that is the sufficiency, but there is some truth to how thick is the lining of your pot and how much can you hold in, or does everything that God pours into you leak out right away? And so I drew these 2 things. If you're watching the video, you can look at this, but here's a pot with very thin exterior. That if something bold and powerful were to be put in it, it would shatter it. And in here is a pot that has this thick lining. And I wrote above it, spiritual grit. Whenever God works in our lives, and I'm seeing this through my own experiences, I've been rather discouraged lately, just because God has been working in ways that is strengthening the walls of my pot. And it's hard. It's hard because in the process of a potter repairing a pot, they take those places that have broken things and they unglue them. It's tough to be unglued and for you to see what's underneath and say, ugh, I did not know that was there. I didn't want to know that was there. But okay, God, once you exposed it, repair it and make it stronger. And a lot of my life is like that right now with my cancer diagnosis and God just showing me things that habits, sinful patterns, other things in my life that I just said, you know what? These are just kind of things and I'm not going to deal with them, but God just exposed them to the point where I can't deny them anymore. And that's tough. And it's required me to be rather real with myself and Him. And I know it's strengthening me. But as somebody was praying over me this last weekend, she said, I feel disappointment in you. And that is true. I've been disappointed with myself. I've been disappointed that God has had to do some extreme things in my life to get me to turn around in some areas. I don't know about you. Spiritual grit is hard. It is something that we want in our lives, yet the process of building it is very difficult. Yet, are we sufficient in holding what God has given to us? Not if we don't experience the mending and the strengthening like we need. And Daniel went through that, and we continue to see in his story how God continues to do these things that test the strength of what he can hold that God gives him. And we also see people like this king who lose everything because they choose not to allow God to strengthen them and avoid all that he is doing in and around them and don't change. So just want to encourage you, whatever God's doing in your life, it's for a good purpose. And he is working things out for good. And no matter how hard it seems, it is worth the journey. So just want to encourage you and just say keep going. Keep getting in the Word. Keep hearing what God has to say to you and keep following him. So thanks for joining me on Daily Revelations. I will see you again tomorrow as we continue this study through Daniel 5.